this week's stock is again something a little different. It's also another stock that's got a really beautiful story. So I want Pratik and the rest of the audience to imagine again, sort of like that scene from Iron Man where he's creating like that suit in the cave, right? They've been eating only vada pavs every day just so that they can actually save all of their money. Take off with your drone, and suddenly a gust of wind takes your drone and you away. You'd think that that's the worst way to start off your business. You have immense amount of pressure. You and your friends are presenting your little pet project as of now, and the drone completely spirals out and falls in the worst possible location ever. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ayush.
Hello guys, Pratik here.
Before we begin, as always, we'd like to tell you that Rupeeting does free portfolio reviews. If you feel like your portfolio needs a little bit of an outsider perspective on how well it's doing or how well it's not doing in the current market, just go down to our website. The link is in the description below. Upload your portfolio, and we'll get back to you with not just a free portfolio review, but a call with one of our fund managers who will explain in detail where you've messed up and where you've done really well and how you can improve your entire portfolio. Apart from that, while that is also our usual free offering this time, I think sometime next week on the 31st of May, we're having our yet another quarterly webinar with Rupeeting, talking about the last 4 months of the markets. We explain how our funds have been doing, how the market's been doing, and what our perspective or take would be on the market going forward in the next couple of months. So we'll have that link in the description for you to register for free and join us for a little bit of a chat on the weekend and see how the markets have been treating all of us over the last quarter. Great. So this week's stock is again something a little different. It's also another stock that's got a really beautiful story and is not very well known, but it's a story of a couple of college boys who decided to rack their brains and forego all the college like behavior and start a company, and that company is done very, very well as a business, but not so much as a stock until very recently. But we will get into all of that after we set a little context for what the story is. So I want Pratik and the rest of the audience to imagine again, because we do a lot of this bullshit now. So the year is 2009. Okay, we're talking about a setting where three or four IIT Bombay students, let's name them Ankit Mehta, Rahul Singh, Ashish Bhatt, and there was a fourth individual in their team who joined in much later, but this is the three core member team from IIT Bombay. 2009, they stood in somewhere in Delhi shivering because they've just created their first ever prototype of a drone out of literally scrap material, sort of like that scene from Iron Man where he's creating like that suit in the cave, right? So that kind of debut of their prototype that they've painstakingly created in some kind of leaky garage in Navi Mumbai that's dripping water. They've been eating only vada pavs every day just so that they can actually save all of their money. And they pooled in about 3.5 lakhs to make this prototype. And they had the largest task ever, which is at that age to show their prototype to the DRDO chief, Mr. Saraswat. Now, DRDO, for those who don't know, is the Defense Research and Development Organization of our country. So, all the missiles, tanks, vehicles, UAVs, drones, and guns, and everything that you can think of, the research is done corely through this organization. So you have immense amount of pressure. You and your friends are presenting your little pet project as of now, and you're hoping for that pet project to take up very well. And what happens is you take off with your drone, and suddenly a gust of wind takes your drone and you away, and the drone completely spirals out and falls in the worst possible location ever, Mr. Saraswat ke chai ke cup mein. Yeah, bear in mind this drone is really small, right? It's meant for surveillance, it's meant for tracking India's borders. And the first ever presentation for this particular product, it fell into the DRDO chief's chai only. So you'd think that that's the worst way to start off your business, that's the worst way to end a presentation. But on the contrary, Mr. Saraswat was so impressed that he said that you fixed the gyroscope on your drone, which caused that malfunction in the first place, and they're going to fund everything. That's the start of the company that we're going to talk about today called IdeaForge. It listed back in 2023, and unfortunately, the stock hasn't done very well even now. Let's see current price as we're recording. It's down, still down 58, 59% since its listing in 2023. But the last 1 month has seen almost a 47-48% increase in stock price. I mean, for very obvious reasons, the Indo-Pak scuffle that we like to call it in the office, because war thodi ho raha hai. It's not like Pakistan threw 400 drones at us in the span of the last month, but our drones have managed to keep our citizens safe, and IdeaForge is a very, very key and important factor in ensuring the safety of our nation. So this is the company that gained 50% market share almost instantaneously, because they were the only ones doing these kind of unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs as all the Call of Duty enthusiasts would like to call it. But this story is essentially that a couple of young boys decided to let go of being children, or let go of being young, and decided to do something for the nation. And while the couple of years in the beginning did really well, financially they've not been doing so, but still the product, the vision, the innovation, all of that remains, and the story is intact, whether people in the market think it is or not. So let's go ahead and decode the story a little bit. In 2007, these are the founders: Ankit Mehta, who was a mechanical engineer in IIT Bombay; Rahul Singh, who was an electronics engineer from IIT Bombay; and Ashish Bhatt, who was the only aerospace engineer among the pool. So they pulled in about 3.5 lakhs. They got into robotics competitions. They taught on the side, whatever they could to get as much money as they could, and go to Chor Bazaar in Mumbai, get parts. And they took parts from like toy helicopters and have started making their drones. So that's an incredible start, where you've been as nifty and crafty as you can, but the result is a 2,300 crore market cap company at the end of 2 years, 20 years almost. So yeah, I mean, they had no air conditioning, their roof was leaking, they had no money, they had only passion, vision, and effort on their side to create this insane entity. And the product that they called it was Netra. I'm not too sure what it stands for actually. It's a good Netra Idea Forge full form. This is the in-depth research we do here at Repeating. So Netra stands for doesn't stand for anything. It just NTPC Energy Technology Research Alliance.
Netra, I think it will be it's a Hindi word for eyes, right? So it's because it's surveillance. Surveillance. And hence the word Netra. Nice. My Hindi is so bad that I didn't think about that word first.
But yeah, that was the first prototype, and I think 2007 was when they had their first flight. I mean, IIT Bombay was the first incubator for IdeaForge, and then they went on and got their DRDO deal. And again, I think we've discussed the 2611 attack, I think, in some other podcast, where I think it was one of the banks, Yes Bank,
Yes,
where one
bank,
of the
yeah.
founders died in
Right, right.
2611. So another inflection point where one of our previous podcasts and this podcast joins is right after the 2611 attacks. The Maharashtra police needed constant surveillance across the city, and they placed a 1 crore deal to get a couple of these drones from IdeaForge, which was one of their largest contracts ever at the time. So Mumbai police getting about 6 drones, if I'm not wrong, six or yeah,
Yes,
about six Netra drones, just to look across the entire skyline of Mumbai and ensure that our citizens are safe. So at that time, 1 crore was 3 times the amount that they needed to break even. So their cost was only one third, 30 lakhs, to produce those 6 drones, and they made up
it
one
shows
crore.
such a high margin business this
Absolutely,
is.
absolutely. And I think that's something that's a good point that we will mention towards the later half as well. But again, so they started 2007 with DRDO. They went on in 2010 to get Maharashtra police contract. Then they went and got their first army order 2 years after that for the same product. So I think in 2012 there was something called the Agra Drone Challenge, where companies from not just India but across the world came in and showcased their hardware and software capabilities for drones. And somehow IdeaForge maintained its integrity and its vision, wherein they beat everyone. They beat everyone, they outperformed everyone, and the IAF, or the Indian Armed Forces, placed its first order, and that order was in the hundreds of crores, if I'm not wrong. And it was phased out into a couple of years. And by 2016, they were getting defense contracts to the tune of 135, 140 crores. So this is crazy. I mean, one of their products that we've just listed here is something called the Switch UAE. So it's the first hybrid drone that's capable of a 90-minute flight in temperatures that are touching -20 degrees.
Yeah, I think I read one of the interviews also where the temperatures have gone to less than minus 30 degrees and
nothing's
they have
happened
been
to the
able to,
drones. Exactly.
easily, the drones have been easily able to function.
So that's brilliant. I mean, their entire USP is the fact that they put so much effort into the drone that you will not have to worry about a single malfunction, especially when these drones are placed at like locations like our POK or Kashmir or Himalayas, where there is invader possibility, and this drone is the first line of defense in terms of finding out who the invader is. But brilliant. So let's give you a little bit of a backup on what the business model is. So each of these drones, if you had to buy one of them, obviously you won't, but if you had to, it's priced anywhere between 25 30 lakhs to about 1 crore for each drone, regardless of what the drone does. That's their general price range. And they also do like drone pilot testing, training. They service the drones. They provide data analytics from the drones that surveil, and they sell that data off to, I mean, obviously to the defense or the government. No one, no retailer or consumer out there is going and getting this data. So they can charge that premium for it. So 59 to 60% of the revenue comes from the hardware that they're selling, the actual drones. And about the rest of it, 40%, is coming from those drones going into the civilian sector. So agriculture to maintain crops, infrastructure,
Mining also, I think.
mining as well, so that like you can keep track of, like this is just tracking. This entire business is just surveillance drones. They don't do much in terms of offense, but they help in defense. Now, what's happening with the business is that this split of hardware versus, sorry, defense versus civilian, which right now is at 60-40, keeps changing. So as of the fourth quarter of FY25, in fact, they had 96% of their revenue coming from the civilian sector and just about 4% from the defense.
So basically, there is no clear, demarcation or order value which the regular stream of orders which they get from either of the segments if we see.
Right. So I think FY25 definitely was a year like that. But from 2000, let's say 10 to 2020, 23, there was a fair amount of visibility because there were consistent orders coming from the Indian Armed Forces. But like you said, like there now that demarcation is fading, there's no real split because it's changing quarter to quarter. And frankly,
Such huge variations, I mean, it must be difficult for anyone who's tracking the business to, to see what could be the split in the future.
right,
And even for the next quarter itself, like
correct,
96% of the revenues came in from the civil sector, right? In this
exactly,
particular quarter.
right.
So,
And in fact, so a function of that then became that this quarter only registered about 20 crores of revenue, whereas the quarter a year ago, March
I
2024,
think the civil sector will be ordering drones at a much
and at that price range also, and at the pace as well, exactly. So the pace in growth has really faltered over the couple of quarters because again, the defense sector doesn't always need drones, but their expertise lies in there. So there are very evident red flags in IdeaForge's business model because they have a dependency on long-term defense contracts, but sometimes they just don't happen. So the last couple of years was a function of that. Actually, just the last 2 years was a function of that. Because if you see consolidated numbers, March 2020 we had 14 crores of revenue. March 2024 it became 314 crores in revenue, and then this year it dropped to less than half of that at about 160 crores in revenue. So it's yet to be seen whether we can actually predict how IdeaForge goes. But as of now, they have been doing fairly well, except for the last 1 year because of the lack of defense orders. And I guess that's one of the reasons why the stock price plummeted since its IPO happened a lot closer to when FY25 even began. So that's the kind of battlefield we're dealing with on the business front. But what they didn't see coming is what the battlefield would show on the stock market. And I think that's something that Pratik would be able to explain better.
sure thing. So I think, yeah, the years leading up to the IPO, explosive growth. I mean, surely the company was in a young stage at that time. The people were recognizing their products very recently. And as you mentioned that, in 2016, I think they got their first Indian Army contract, right? I think
Yeah,
around
I think 2016,
large value.
2012.
Yeah, so
2012 was a
2012 was
large
the
one.
first
Yeah.
one, and then 2016 they
They got
got
a huger order,
orders for
yes.
about 100 crores, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm sure that their order book must also be at a very good position
Correct.
during that time.
Right.
So same happened with them during the period of 2017 and 2020 also. So they saw explosive growth. The revenues were I think at around 15 crores in FY20, which went up to 186 crores in FY23, so which is a 12x jump in
Crazy.
3 years. And gross margins also rose to from 42% in FY20 to 58% in FY23. Wow. So as we discussed before that, margin
accretive product.
They're able to sell their products for prices greater than 3x their cost.
Yeah.
Definitely they are, making margins. They're earning money.
Correct.
Good money, good margins on their.
But then again, the problem is that we're looking at it at gross margin levels. If we look at it on a PAT level, there's a serious red flag there. So the year that you said, right, FY20, and they have about 15 crores of profit, they made a 13 crore net loss that year.
But then that's the thing with such products, right?
Yeah.
And such companies. If you're a young company and delivering such value-added services,
correct,
you'll have to keep investing
burning.
A lot of money to,
In fact, that's a great point
there.
because so I think most of their cost goes into researching how to make the product in the first place and testing. So guess what percentage of revenue? So ideally, most people, like in general, the industry average would be we spend at max 10% of revenue for R&D, right?
15,
20 plus.
That's
so almost a quarter of their revenue every year is going into R&D only. So while that's great, like kudos to them for spending that much because that's the reason their products are infallible and impenetrable. But profit ही नहीं है भाई. Like to be very frank, FY22 you said the FY23 revenues went up to 186. FY24 went up to 314. But profits went from this negative 13 crore loss
of profit they made I think in
Yeah,
FY23,
which is
went
not
to
a
a loss of 62 crores
in this year. Yeah.
In FY24, post IPO.
So that's incredibly weird to look at. Like a lot of this money also went on because so lithium ion prices skyrocketed.
I think management also came up in some interview and said that, right?
Yes.
Majority of their losses can be attributed to the increase in lithium ion prices.
So there are those unfortunate volatilities.
But then at the same time, I think what another issue, which not only IdeaForge but all other defense companies were also facing, was slow pace of orderings from the government itself.
Right.
So that happened with them, and that is also visible in their order book. So if you see, their order book was I think around 136 crores in FY23, which is now
before the IPO.
Yeah, before the IPO, which has now come down to 22 crores.
Whew. So there's no money coming into the defense sector.
There is no visibility for their revenues.
At least there wasn't at that time. Yeah.
That has been the case.
Give us a little bit of a look into what price IdeaForge listed at, what it's at now. Like what kind of drop are we looking at?
Actually, the IPO was actually very good. The IPO went really well for them. It was oversubscribed by I think around 106 times.
106 times?
Yeah. But then it's the new business
Scarcity
defense.
premium.
All those I think words might have been used during the IPO or the roadshows.
We are the only ones on the list.
Drone makers.
Actually, that's interesting because I think there's a couple of other companies that do these drones. They're just not as large. So another company that we track very regularly is Zen Technologies, which does a similar thing, but in terms of simulations, not actual drone technology.
So they make anti-drone technology.
Right.
Try and counter these drones.
Let's look at Zen Technologies' price. Have they been able to counter?
Zen has actually done well, but same happened with Zen. So I think Zen made Zen has given I think around 3,000 plus returns in the last 5 years. And
5,000%.
Yeah, see. And
oh my god!
But then they also had a huge fall in the price over the last year or so. I think the price fell by I think around 50 to 60% in the last year or so
I
itself.
Think you're right. So in fact, it happened just now.
Yeah.
So it happened in Jan to about Feb, where oh shit. Okay, that's not.
So the market was volatile. They didn't have and their order book visibility wasn't that good at that particular point in time. They had issues with their margins.
Right.
Again, all of this happened because of delayed ordering from the government. So they weren't able to provide visibility to the investors as well.
Good.
Hence, but then I think this quarter's results for Zen has been amazing and their guidance was also really good that we try and get a CAGR of 50% or so over the next 3 years. We now see pickup in orders coming in from the government, so we see our order book growth being explosive.
Right.
So I think we could see a similar case here for IdeaForge as well. And so that has also happened. We were discussing why the Operation Sindoor was happening. That there's this company called IdeaForge. We should look into it.
In fact, the viewers should know how stupid we are. The two of us were sitting here on this table and we were researching and we saw it come across a little. I think it was just when Operation Sindoor was being thought about. So it hadn't even skyrocketed yet, and this is just when defense companies were not doing that well. And we're like, we think our country will use drones. We should put some money, let's see what happens. And we forgot about it. We completely forgot about it. And then come Monday morning when we have to write this for you and we realized, let's see, look at the stock price now. 1 month mein 48%. We're like, we could have made so much money just because our country was quote unquote blowing up Pakistan.
So that happened. So again, I think we might see similar trajectory for IdeaForge also. Because Zen also went down by 50-60%, then again came up by 30-40% from the lows.
Right.
Which has happened with
Do you think that's like a pattern for like companies that are very dependent on government for their revenues?
Actually, that is a pattern, and that is good at times like these when there will be increased orders from the government. But then when there are no orders from the government, you'll suddenly see a drop in the prices because market being forward looking, they'll know that no growth is being seen in the business or there is no revenue visibility. So might as well just sell the stock right now and then maybe enter it at a lower price.
So I think that's a good insight to gather just about the defense sector in general, where a lot of people keep asking us, oh, should we buy HAL, should we buy BDL, it's done so well, every day 5%, 10%. But that point being that as long as you don't have a fundamental backing for whether there is revenue visibility at all, at least in the next quarter or two, it's seldom a good idea to just ride a wave because of what is happening or ride a wave because a news happened that, oh, HAL bought these many or got an order for these many jets. Or for IdeaForge's case, a couple of hundred drones. But it is a good leading indicator to wait for that information and then decide. But you never know when that information comes your way either. So it's very difficult to time it.
But then usually when you see if there are like 1 or 2 orders coming in a quarter, then it's usually an early indication that there might be more orders coming in.
Right.
And usually defense stocks. I think 2020 to 2022, 23, I think that was a good period for defense stocks where Mazda was where everyone ran up by more than 1000% or whatever. And all of this was purely on their future revenue visibility because they had orders of I think more than 2 times, 3 times of the revenues. So and the pace hadn't slowed down. It was at a gradual pace they were getting orders. So all of the investors were just thinking that they're getting orders now. The stock will do well, the company will do well, hence the stock price was doing well. Suddenly there was this 1 year where orders stopped coming in from the government, bought delay what it's not like they weren't prioritizing defense. There was just plain and simple delay on the end of the government. And because of that, if you see all the stocks, whether it's shipbuilding or whether it's defense, government dependency, they all fell by 40 to 50% at least.
Right.
And now again, these have started, I think, in the last 4 months from their lows. Again, they've reached to, I think, around 40 to 50%.
Right.
They've given gains. So I think this has also happened with IdeaForge. But the only thing is that, this run-up has been because of this particular war-like situation and in the hope that, the company will be getting more orders. But are there any more other factors, if you could tell that, which we think that, could be a good bet, IdeaForge could be a good bet for all the investors looking right now in the future. So are there any other factors?
Before we get to that, I think one of the points that Pratik mentioned was really important, and a term that he mentioned was an order book, right? So order book is essentially the government or any entity has given your company an order that is to be executed over a certain period of time. So they've committed that, okay, we will get X number of products from you. It is valued at this much. So we will pay you that once you fulfill the order. It's not revenue. It is possibility of revenue. An order book is again something that's very important to note, is not a contractual obligation either.
Yes.
Orders fall through a lot. It happens very often not so much in defense, but it does happen on a very regular basis. So we should take orders with a pinch of salt at any given point in time.
That is also true, and I think I just demand one more point. So I think once the stock price runs up because of the order book,
Right.
then investors will wait and watch how is the company executing that particular order. Because if there are delays in execution at the end of the company, the investors will again trash the stock.
Correct.
And this had again happened with Mazgaon also.
Right.
So I think the last fall was because of delay and because of they were also, I think they had delays with few of the ships.
Correct.
Which they were supposed to deliver, which I think there was a few delays and execution wasn't on time.
Right.
So because of that also the stock got thrashed. So I think when it comes to companies like IdeaForge also, you need to track order book, you need to track how are they executing it. Are they executing it on time or are they before time? If after time, it is a big red flag again.
Correct.
The stock price won't go anywhere if they're not delivering on time. So that is also one important factor which we need to keep in mind while we are looking at these companies.
Right. That's very true. But yeah, in IdeaForge's case, there's a couple of possible tailwinds that we can discuss. So IdeaForge is now being considered for a 400 crore worth order from the government. Now again, as we've just discussed over the last couple of minutes, orders seldom mean short revenue, but it usually is an indication. So finalization is yet to be confirmed for this 400 crore order, but they've decided to create some kind of new drone technology, and the government is experimenting with deploying that across our borders. And I think they intend to actually capitalize on that whole civilian sector, on the contrary to what we believed in the first half of this podcast, that there won't be a market for it. But apparently there is, and now the revenues in total has run from 0% to 21% of total revenues in the span of 2 years. So there seems to be a market for it in logistics, in mining, in agriculture, where people need these really small drones to surveil their land, surveil their property, surveil their projects. So there does exist a market for highly cash liquid entities to be able to pay for some sort of this thing. In fact, I think there's another export deal as well that IdeaForge is indulging in. With, I think the value is about north of $2 million, and they want to do it with the Middle East, I believe, and it's going to be AI powered, and it's going to have like a 120-minute charge this thing, so it'll be in air and endure all of those negative temperatures that we discussed earlier, but instead of 90 minutes it's now 120. So it's the next gen Netra surveillance drone that they are now testing, not just with our Indian armed forces, but with the Middle East and with the US and stuff like that. Plus they have something new called drone as a service. So they have a subscription service for drones now. You don't have to buy it. So for those low ticket item people like us, who don't have a crore, I know, just for the fuck of it, yeah, let's just get a drone. So I think that's what they want to capitalize on. They want to capitalize on boys who really who will do fight with a nail. Impulse buying, making impulse buying decisions. But I mean, what that stupid decision could end up in them getting 500 crores worth of annual revenue if this actually works. And much like the rest of their business, which is about 50% ish gross margins, this particular segment is at 70 north percent of gross margin. So this rejig that they've done in the business to avoid the kind of volatility that they've seen in FY25 could actually be quite valuable and a lot more stable for, as we said, for investors to foresee how well the company is going to do. So yeah, and in general, I think the Indian drone market expects to grow up to about by 3 times in the next 7 years, 6 years, less than that. And IdeaForge intends to target about 43% of revenues from defense then, and the rest of it from the civil sector. So we could see IdeaForge from being a very defense-heavy, defense-dependent company, starting its roots from something like DRDO, to now going all out in terms of a more retail approach, making these drones much more accessible for any purpose in terms of surveillance, regardless of who you are. So that's brilliant. They want to get listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So
that's interesting.
They want the US exposure there. So that might be a little value accretion for the Indian entity as well. Who knows? But there's a couple of things that they're doing, right? More technology, stable business environment, and just all-out expansion in every way that they can. So these three things that one that they've nailed since the beginning. Innovation is their game, but getting a better business model sorted and getting a better indication of how stable their business will be over the next couple of years. That's what they're trying to fix. So yeah, I mean, whether it's our borders in terms of a battlefield or the stock market as the battlefield, IdeaForge has tried its best to navigate all of it. It's faltered in some ways, but made up for it in others. And we think that this stock is very interesting to look at, not just as the narrative that's gone from the IIT Bombay students to defense contractors, Seedha in like 15 years, but starting from someone with 3.5 lakhs to now a 2,300 crore market cap company, which essentially means that any innovation, if put enough effort on, could yield some sort of success if you've done it right and if you do it well. So that narrative really works in general for the stock market, where a good solid business with a good vision and a real root ground story just quadruples your money whenever you think the time is right. So in a month's time, we could have made 50%, but we lost. We expect more stories like this to show up on the podcast on the regular so that y'all don't lose out that opportunity to at least read about a company like this and understand the story. But I think that's all for this week's podcast. It's been a very heartwarming story once again. So I think we've summarized a lot of the story. We've covered the entire journey of these three, four IIT Bombay boys who've used their drive for innovation to build a 2,300 crore market cap company from a 3.5 lakh pooled investment that they scrapped through by attending competitions and saving up. So it's a brilliant, brilliant story of how a solid business with innovation as its only driver could really, really do well as a narrative, not just to listen to it on a podcast, but actually research it, invest in it, and hopefully make some money. Like we lost out on 50% gains in the last month. But again, anyway, there's always money to be made in the markets, and our intention is just to educate and inform you that these stories exist. They're a lot more common than you think, and almost every other company has a very, very good story. So if you like stories like these that we cover, where we cover the entire narrative, we cover the business model, and we cover what we think is happening, then drop in every now and then, watch our videos. And that's all for this week. Please stay tuned for another video sometime next week where we cover yet another narrative for you again. And again, free portfolio review and webinar both happening very, very soon, all for free, all for you. Description
And the
below.
newsletter,
And the newsletter,
guys.
please,
Yes,
please
yes.
subscribe to the newsletter. It's free and you get all of this data to your email instantaneously on the weekend. So,
So the newsletter would be a good start to your independent research as well.
exactly, absolutely. Like, it's a good starting point. Correct. Am I forgetting anything else?
Sir, as always, like, share, and subscribe, guys. Don't forget, please.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned for the next week and take care. Bye bye.